Hello and welcome to my channel. Hey, this is Juanita. Today I'm going to be showing you how to get started with your chiminea. In my last video, so if you're new to my channel, I will pin my last video up above here for you to go catch. But on my last video, I took you on a tour to where I purchased my chiminea. And one of the comments that I received was that they were under the impression that they weren't to use anything other than candles in it. Now, perhaps the real small ones, if you saw my video, they had some little tiny chimeneas. Now, perhaps those you would want to use candles or use it for incense. But this larger ones, as well as the mid-range ones, you definitely can use them, and they are intended for wood burning or coals that are intended for a chiminea. Now, one of the things that I want to point out about the chimeneas that I think is important is the fact that this is clay, and clay is porous. This hasn't been really that treated, so it is porous, and it will decay over time if you don't protect it. So you do want to put it underneath something or cover it in the winter time. If you're in a cooler climate such as Portland where we get a lot of rain. But outside of that, I keep it underneath my small pergola, but I also keep it away from any wood burning elements like the posts that are behind it. I only have one post behind it. I do have some wood above it, but I do have a chimney cover to prevent sparks from going up that high. The other thing that I do also is that I have it on pavers. If you don't put it directly on the ground in an area where there's nothing there to burn, consider putting it on pavers or cement, some type of concrete slab of sorts, because you do want to protect your environment as well. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a fire in your yard. So that being said, I'm going to be sitting down here and giving you a view of everything that I have and what I do to start my chiminea. Now, some of the important things that I want to point out about starting your chimeneas is that you want to start them very slow, because otherwise, if you start your fires really high, you're going to end up cracking this because you're going to shock it with the heat because they're cold to touch at the very beginning. And so even if you have them out in the sun, you still want to start them off slow. Now, there's been some questions about, do you use sand? I don't use sand on mine. I wouldn't even recommend to use sand, especially if you live in a more moisture environment such as Portland. Portland rains a lot, so moisture does collect, and sand would collect that moisture. Well, over time, that moisture is going to, in my opinion, is going to decay your chiminea at the bottom and eventually lead to cracks or breaks. I do pottery, so I'm very familiar with how clay works to a great extent. So that's where that's coming from. So yeah, so let me kind of get started. If you have any questions or concerns, leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. But I just wanted to give a quick tutorial of how I do my chiminea, what I purchase with my chiminea, and what I would recommend. So I'm gonna scoot you back and let you see what I've done. Okay, and I'm gonna apologize ahead of time because there's a lot of construction going on in my neighborhood. I've got my neighbors over here doing some reconstruction of their backyard. Across the street, I've got somebody building a house. And then I've got my neighbor to the south of me who just got a little puppy. And then the ones from the east side of me, they have a puppy too. So there's always going to be some kind of background noise. So pardon me for that, but we'll get through this. But anyway, so here's my chiminea. And what I purchased with it was a grill. And I don't know how many inches that is, but I do know that there's 17 inches across here. I also purchased what they call a clay ring. It's just basically a pot that has some holes on it. And of course, then this sits on top. And there's quite a bit of space in between here. There's holes in there. And I'm going to bring you really close so that you can see the inside of my chiminea, so you can see that I kind of outlined where this pot sits, where this, or the disc sits. And there's still probably, I would say, a good 3 inches underneath there. Now, I don't know the whole purpose of sand and why people choose to use sand. I don't get that method, but personally for me, I wouldn't recommend it. Like I said, I want to be able to keep my chiminea for a long time. And with that being said, I want to make sure that it doesn't deteriorate the bottom or contribute to breakage over time. And if you do start your fires really fast, keep in mind, you will shock it and you will potentially break it. So I would recommend to start a fire, a very small fire, for about 10 minutes, and just keep feeding it. Feed it little twigs throughout the time, you know, and let it just start up really slowly. And you want to do it every time you start up your chiminea. I wouldn't recommend to use large logs, maybe small blocks of it. Over time, maybe once it builds up with soot in the inside, then you could probably use a log or two. But to begin with, start them off slow and enjoy them for a little while. But you really start putting some bonfire in there, because you really don't want that. For one thing, it could break on you while it's on fire and lead to a lot of heartaches. So anyway, with that said, one of the methods that you can do is that you can do the Boy Scout method. Let's see if I can do this without breaking. And do a fire starter such as this. And I'm going to try that for today. Usually, like I said, I just crumble up some paper and throw in some of my bark shavings, and then it starts up. And then once that starts off, I just start putting little pieces of cedar in there. So come up close. You might not be able to see really clear in here. I'm kind of echoing right now, but just so you kind of get an idea. Bring you up close and personal here. Give you a little bit of light. So do you see where I drew a line right there? And right down here, that is where this lays, more or less. So I just put this in here. And nice and level. And what I would recommend, if it's nice and clean, once it starts having burnt elements in here, you're not going to want to do this. I just happened to clean this out just so that I could demonstrate what I would suggest when you first start it. I would suggest putting your paper in the center of your disc, and then placing your grill on top of that. Because you're going to be putting your fire starter right above that, and that'll help you get that started as well. So I'm going to put my Boy Scout twigs. So then you just start your fire and just start your paper. If you don't want to purchase the disc, one of the things that you can do is that you can put masonry bricks, and I would do them in fours, kind of, and then lay your grill on top of that, or you could use even lever rock. Yeah, I'm not so sure that I would use sand. That I think I would stay away from. But you know, it's your Chiminea, it's your choice. You know your environment. I would base it with that. Personally, for me, that just wouldn't be something I would do. So once you get a fire going this heavy, then just keep touching your Chiminea and making sure that it's getting warm before you start adding a lot of kindling in there. It's going pretty good, and so you don't want anything bigger than that initially. Like, I'm feeling it warm here, but down here it's still nice and cold, and up here it's starting to get warm. But yeah, just keep checking on it, and just don't heat it up too fast, too quick. Don't add a lot. Just touch your Chiminea, making sure that it warms up slowly. The reason for not putting, like, say, cherry and madrone or any type of really hard, dense wood, like even oak, is because those types of wood, they burn really, really slow, but really, really hot. So I would suggest those for putting in a wood stove if you're heating with a wood stove, because they will last all night long. They will burn really hot, really slow, and then in the morning you have some embers and you just throw a couple of cedar logs in there, got a fire going again. So that's the reason why you don't want to really put them in here. If you're going to put madrone or some hard wood that puts out a lot of heat, I would just do little chunks, probably a little about this size, if not a little bit bigger, because even this will last you a long time if it's a hard wood. So whatever you do, I hope that you guys will take at least something from this tutorial, and that you will enjoy your Chiminea if you have one, or if you decide to purchase one, that you will enjoy it as well. Looks like my fire went out, so with that, I'm going to leave you for the day. Stay tuned for more videos, and again, thank you for watching. Mwah! Love you. Okay, on to the next project.